Hello, I'm Guy Hayward and I'm here with Fr Graeme Rowlands in his wonderful flat next to St Silas's Church in Camden Town. Fr Graeme is a vicar here and apparently does brilliant services and lifting the hearts of those in the local area, which is an inner city area of Camden. And I am speaking to him particularly today about his work with the school children of the school he's a governor of nearby. And he takes these children to pilgrimage to Walsingham, to St Paul's Cathedral, to Westminster Abbey. And I'm just intrigued to know more about this because I think the British Pilgrimage Trust would do well to start taking school children to special places on pilgrimage and opening them up to these treasures of our land. So it'd be great to talk to him, and I'm really looking forward to it. And hello, Fr Graeme.
All schools, I think, actually as part of the curriculum, at least in theory, as part of their RE, would do pilgrimage. Because it's not necessarily just a Christian concept, of course. Every possible religion goes on pilgrimage. But they would do it as a sort of study of this thing that people do, and why they do it and what they do when they're there.
More sort of intrigue.
Yeah.
Intellectual intrigue rather than practice.
Yeah. And that way, in fact, the kids, they know what pilgrimage is, but they've never experienced it. And it's only by experiencing it that they really understand it. So I'm taking Year 6 on pilgrimage to St Alban next Monday. And that's normally been the pattern. I take Year 3 to St Paul, as in St Paul's Cathedral, Year 4 to St Edward, as in Westminster Abbey, Year 5 to Walsingham for 2 nights, and Year 6 to St Alban. And before we go, we do a general session on pilgrimage, what's the point of it, what is it, and so on and so forth. And then we do a slightly more detailed subsequent session on what's the focus of the place that we're going to, and a bit of history, but also a bit of real, what happens there now. And then they write intercessions and things which we take with us on the day. And so part of the pattern of the day is the offering of prayers, the lighting of candles and so on there. And that then enthuses them about it. And this is not just Christians, because the school's about 30% Muslim, but they will come. And they will come to Mass, of course, during school time and so on. And it actually then becomes much more part of their experience. The old jingle, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I will remember. If you involve me, I will actually understand. The problem is that quite a lot of schools do sort of go through ticking the boxes.
The thing about pilgrimage is you have to have your body in the place.
Yes. I used to do Walsingham in a day, but it's a long way. And although they experience the place, and we do some of the essential elements, they don't sort of absorb the place or get the feel of it. If you take them there for 2 nights, we do Wednesday to Friday.
The school give you that long?
Yes, and so we arrive Wednesday lunchtime. They then, of course, find their accommodation, because they stay like real pilgrims in the rooms and so on. So we go into lunch, we sort out rooms, we then do a bit of actual real history, so we go into the Abbey ruins and we do a bit of sketching and that sort of thing there. Before we go to the Abbey ruins, we go for intercessions in the Holy House. So we get the religious bit in right at the beginning. And then I take them to the martyrs' cellar, just over opposite the gateway, where the martyrs were actually imprisoned on the night before they were taken and hanged, drawn and quartered in the field behind. And then we walk to the slipper chapel, and most of them choose to take their shoes off. I've mentioned this, and they do. We go to the slipper chapel, we say some prayers there, and then we walk back, and some of them walk both ways, barefoot. We then have supper. We then go to church, just for a complete change, and I think, yes, that's right, on the Wednesday evening we have exposition and benediction, so there's a sort of quiet prayer time and things like that. Then they go to bed. That's the most difficult bit. And then Thursday we have a sung mass in the morning, for which they prepare and use servers and things like that. We're there for Corpus Christi actually next year, which we've been for before, which is good because you could involve the whole class, and they did a carpet of flowers and a chalice and host on the ground in front of the outdoor altar in the shrine grounds. And we had a procession from the parish church. They threw herbs, they threw flower petals, etc., etc. They served at it. And then after lunch we take them to the beach. And so we go to Sheringham, and they have an ice cream and one thing and another. Then we go back to Walsingham. Then they have very necessary showers. After showers and things, they then have a barbecue on the farm. So I take them down to the farm. They climb all over the tractor. There's a farm in the village, and I know the estate manager, and he provides the barbecue utterly free of charge. And the main farmhand comes and gives them a tour, so it's sort of see cow, then eat cow. So we go up the hill and they have burgers and things like that. And it's wonderful for them because there's so much space. They can just sort of run down the hill and muck around and so on, and they're utterly safe. Which for kids from London is extraordinary.
How many?
30.
30, and then how many of them would have never been outside in the countryside before?
About half of them will never have seen a real horse in a field very much.
So
I've seen it on telly.
Apart from anything, that's a huge aspect of it.
And then Friday, I think after breakfast, we do the village. And so we do parish church, Russian Orthodox, Methodist chapel, and so on, which is always an interesting experience for them. And
Why?
Why? Because they've never seen anything quite like it. Yeah, I have to be slightly careful what I let them say whilst we're in there.
What kind of... What's...
Well, I say, what's the difference between this and our church? And they say, well, I haven't got Jesus. And I say, what do you mean? And they say, well, there's a cross there and got Jesus on it. And so I say, right, well, what else is different? And they say, I haven't got a tabernacle. And so I say, all right, what else is different? They say, well, there's a big desk thing up the front. What's that there for? There's no altar. And so on. And it's very good, a set of experience for them. And then the worst and most horrific bit of the whole pilgrimage is we take them to the shop where they buy souvenirs. That is awful, because the shrine shop is not really built to cater for 30 kids or even 5 kids. Having been to the shop, if we've survived that bit, we then go back to the shrine church. I bless this whole array of pencils, chocolates, medals, rosaries, you name it, they've bought it. And so I bless all of them, and then we do a sort of final visit. And then we get on the coach, taking a picnic lunch with us, and we stop on the way back for them to eat the lunch. And we get back to school about 4.
How did you go from 0 to 60 effectively? I mean, starting it and saying I want to start doing these with the children, and then give me 3 days. I mean,
yeah. But remember that I'm part of the furniture at school. I do teach there, I teach music there, and I am chairman of the governors. At the moment I do 6 class assemblies, Monday, Tuesday and Friday mornings, and so on. I'm part of the furniture, and so therefore it's easy, really.
When you say it's not a pilgrimage unless they're doing it for God, that's an interpretable comment.
I talk to the kids about there being 3 sorts of pilgrimage. So it's either to a place where something happened, like Jerusalem, like Rome, or it's to a place where there are the relics of a saint, or it's to a place where there's been a vision. Those are the 3 basic aims of pilgrimage, and quite a lot of them, of course, actually tick 2 of those boxes.
That's an interpretation of what a pilgrimage is, and I think it makes sense because God is interpretable for people in terms of whether they just anything beyond themselves, let's say.
Yeah.
Going to whatever is beyond you or beyond normality or your ordinary life, or a bit more than that, maybe a bit more than just going beyond your ordinary life, but that you're glimpsing at something real beyond yourself. And I think that could be God, or it could be...
Yeah, and you're also given the space in which to think and in which to respond to whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's why, Compostela and all that has become so hectically popular, particularly with the sort of average chattering middle classes, because it's rather sort of, trendy to go on this pilgrimage and rough it and so on the journey. You're now getting used to what a cynical person I am. I've never been to Compostela, so I don't know. But
it is interesting. It's not far off how you're describing it, but I think the generous way of looking at it is that they may start off because it's trendy.
I see that. Yeah.
And that they go because it's the end thing, and they do it because their friends have done it, and they chatter about it maybe. But once they actually do it,
that's right.
Even if some of them don't even go into the cathedral, but even the journey there, you can tell that change is happening.
Yes.
On all sorts of levels.
Yeah.
Social, physical. Yeah. Their bodies improve. Their ability to have the time to think improves. Their exposure to lots of different cultures and people and age groups, and it's all good. It's all good grist for the mill of becoming human, even if you started for all the wrong reasons.
I see that.
I mean, the wrong reasons, whatever.
But if you start without reasons or without clear reasons, that's fine. I wasn't brought up to go to church, and look at me now. And you sort of define what you like, what you believe, what you exist for, and so on, as you experience things. Yeah, I understand that perfectly.
So these pilgrimages are, so the ones to St Paul's Cathedral and to Westminster Abbey, are they similar formats? So you drive
They're similar formats.
You drive there?
So, well, no, we get on the underground or a bus or whatever, and they are similar formats insofar as they involve having a mass there, they involve intercessions. St Paul's is a difficult building. It's full of sort of tourists. I am a Canon of the cathedral, that's why I've got these red buttons. It is a difficult building to pray in, and so I actually take them there. We have a sort of tour round, and then we have intercessions and light candles there by the statue of Our Lady, then taking them somewhere else local for Mass. And so, having done that, I get them out of the cathedral and I take them down to St Andrew by the Wardrobe.
Oh yes,
because
there's some quite quiet
down
churches.
there,
That's okay, so that's good. They get to walk around a bit. Because obviously a lot of what we do is a longer walks and a day of walking, or even if it's about, like London, we do from Tower Hill to Westminster Abbey, walking
that's
along.
quite a long walk, yes.
Yeah, it is, and they see so many different churches. But I suppose children, that'd be too long for a child. Maybe Tower to Temple be quite a good one. Which bits of the religious bits do the children get most fired up by, or have inspired by? Is it the intercessions? Is it lighting the candle?
I would have said it's the whole set of experiences. I mean, they used to class masses, because we have those, and so they're used to that as worship. But having it somewhere, like, for example, in St Faith's Chapel in Westminster Abbey, is a completely different ballgame.
That's one of the greatest chapels in the land. There's no more. That seriously is charged with an energy that I have never come across before.
Yeah, that's right.
What's going on there? Why is it so amazing?
It's because it's the only bit of the Abbey that's not been touched, really, and hasn't become a monument of some sort. The rest of the building is crammed with memorials to this one, that one, and the other one. So it's the only bit that's actually preserved its original atmosphere. I mean, there are chantry chapels and so on as well. There's the Henry, whatever it is, 7th chapel behind the high altar right at the east end. But they're all rather overtaken by other things. Whereas St Faith is entirely separate. It's not overrun by tourists.
You don't even know it's there.
No, they don't know it's there. And it's got that very powerful painting of
Catherine.
St Faith.
St Faith.
St
Faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's St Faith holding a gridiron. And underneath it, and I can say this vividly, of course, because I look at it as I'm saying the Mass, there is a medieval wall painting of the crucifixion and so on a sort of frieze, which is very powerful, because you're about that far away from it. And so the sense of connecting with the past, with pilgrimage, and also the other bit of the Abbey is the prayers at the Shrine of St Edward, because I take a relic of St Edward with me, insofar as you can't venerate anything much that's there, although he's in the original shrine. There is a certificated relic here which is part of the silk veil in which the bones were wrapped, which was extracted at the time when the shrine was restored in the 17th century. And so it is a secondary relic of St Edward. I take that with me, and there is therefore something to venerate after the intercessions. So all of this is an exercise in creating something tangible. And so the reason I say I can't single out any of those activities is that they're all creating that tangible connection.
How do the Muslim children and the other faiths, how do they respond to it?
They love it.
In the same way?
Exactly the same way.
So it's,
yes, and so they write intercessions and so on and so forth. It's actually very moving because the intercessions they write are very personal. You know, things like, please help me to get on better with my mum, or whatever. Because children have no sort of, they don't try to create any sophistication about this. If you say, write a prayer about something personal, they'll do it. And so I always say I want 2 intercessions, something personal and something general about the world. It can be whatever you like. And I read out the general ones, and then I say, right, now we're going to have a time of silence during which we're just going to think about our personal prayer. And then I leave the intercessions behind at the shrine. So they've actually offered it themselves, and it's then left there.
Would you go so far as to say that children do better with intercessions than adults because of the lack of sophistication.
Yeah.
Just go straight to the point.
Yeah. Of course, it's much easier for children.
So actually, on that basis alone, school pilgrimages are valuable.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
And it's also good for them to experience somewhere that's much more saturated in prayer than any of the other environments they know. I mean, I'm lucky with both my churches insofar as they're both very good and devotional places. St Silas more than Holy Trinity. St Silas is just over 100 years old. Holy Trinity is 150, 170, whatever it is, years old now. That's as nothing compared with the experience that they're getting on pilgrimage. It broadens all those horizons.
What do you think happens to a child when they experience history? What's actually happening on a spiritual level?
I think they realise that prayer isn't just a personal thing or a communal thing with the people that you can see around you now. I think they realise that they're being taken into an offering of prayer that actually goes through time and goes through space. And so this is two dimensions really. So it's the historic dimension, but it's also the heavenly dimension.
And maybe in the same way that a rock concert crowd is bigger than a small cabaret or something, has an amplifying effect on the experience for the individual.
Yeah.
Is that basically what's happening through history? That it is at your sort of,
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, going back to my jingle, in order to appreciate it, you need to experience it and not just talk about it. And actually, these days, kids are rather sort of inured to images. They constantly see things on screens. And so, although it's, wonderful that we're able to show them real places on a smart board at school, it doesn't actually help very much. Because they stop noticing almost, because they're so used to screen images. For assemblies, in classes, I use screen images, bits of art, places, whatever, but I also try to introduce one real tangible thing. And it's the real tangible thing, no matter how simple it is, that they will remember.
Do they need to have that opened up to that concept of through history and time and connecting with other people, or will they just sense it? I mean, do you say that explicitly, that you're now connecting with the heavenly?
No, I don't. No. But of course, they do understand about saints praying for you. And so there's a sort of basic thing that you say, and you say it in different ways and again and again.
Yeah.
And so there's a basic thing there, but they can then take that on and lead it on in their understanding without you having to tell them exactly how to do that.
The heavenly community
yes,
that they are connecting with, is that just saints, or is that actually anyone who's prayed in that place?
Both, yes.
So that's quite a big amount of people.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It's a different format to the way I do pilgrimage. I start somewhere and then go somewhere and then walk. There's a sort of walking element. This is more about the actual place.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And sounds like that gets a lot in very quickly. Rather than having to do the walking between.
Yes, because you with school you haven't got that amount of time, and you haven't actually got that amount of energy. Really,
to sort of shepherd them.
Yeah.
So it's basically taking them to places not as tourists but as pilgrims. That's basically the only difference between a visit to a church or a visit to a cathedral, because they do that in the schools already.
They do, though. Yes, they do. And a lot of the places do pilgrimage as a concept, but, oh dear, they do it very sort of pedantically and noddy, if you know what I'm saying. You know, this is a font, you put babies into it, it does them good. They don't treat the children with respect. They rather sort of talk down to them, by and large, your average guide at a cathedral.
Yeah. But is it too explanatory but giving them actually quite a sort of surface level explanation rather than the depth? But do you think that's maybe partly because the guys don't know the depth?
Yes, indeed it is. Yes,
I
some
mean,
of them.
You wouldn't do that if you knew the depth. You just wouldn't.
No, but they don't, and so some of the tour bits I get a bit irritated by, because the tours normally are sort of laid on by the place, and so at the Abbey they will provide a couple of official guides who are normally scary old ladies in sort of gowns who take the kids round, and sit them down in the choir stalls and say, isn't this wonderful, the choir comes. And they don't then say, why is it called the choir? And so I then interrupt and say, well, of course, the reason that this bit of the building is called the choir is because it's where the monks sang the offices every day. And so it's that act of singing which names this bit of the building. And that's why when we have a group of singers, we call it a choir. It's that way round.
So actually what this requires, it requires people who know these places very much from a spiritual pilgrim perspective, actually know them deeply.
And that's easier at places that aren't tourist, like Walsingham, than it is at, say, St Paul's Cathedral or Westminster Abbey, where they're dealing with vast numbers of visitors.
So you're doing this, you've got this unique position as chairman, music teacher, assembly person, there's a lot going on, and therefore you can do it, and you're also a canon of the cathedral. There are lots of pieces in place that make this very easy and sort of a no-brainer.
And I'm a guardian of the Shrine of Walsingham.
Oh right, okay.
And so on and so forth.
So it's sort of, but that's obviously not scalable as a sort of idea. So what would your recommendation to church schools at large would be to try and start implementing this kind of field trip, I suppose?
Well, they need to make a contact in the place. It's got to have an element of prayer in it. That's the basic that turns it from an outing or a historic trip into a pilgrimage. It hasn't got to be a mass, it hasn't got to be anything liturgical. But it's got to have an element of prayer, and that's what they miss out on in lots of these places. It's useful if it has something tangible that the kids do whilst they're there. It's very useful if they, let me explain by an example. At St Paul's Cathedral, when they have a group of children and they take them into the choir stalls, they very often have sort of dressing up clothes in the choir stalls, and so they'll dress somebody up as a bishop and so on and so forth, and they think that that's wonderful, because that's the sort of thing that kids like. It is completely pointless. Absolute waste of time. It's treating them like idiots. If they had a real live something or other there, who then said, these are the sort of things I do, then it would be invaluable. But there's no point in dressing a child up in these funny things and taking a photo and then moving on to the next thing. It's actually a matter of, it comes back to them experiencing something.
But so it's sort of spiritually serious.
Yes, it's spiritually serious. It's also spiritual input from them, because children find it very easy to pray. Very easy. And it's also giving them the basics with which they can do that. So, just as I have with the reception in year 1 at school at the moment, every time you say a prayer with them, you have to teach them what to do. You need to be still. You need to be calm on the outside so that you're calm on the inside. And so on and so forth. And if there were just those basic elements, it's easy.
It's easy.
The rest, they will lead it on.
Didn't realise that children were particularly good at prayer. I mean, I'm just not that familiar with all this. So they're better. They're sort of more. It's more natural to them than adults.
More natural, yes. Yes.
Amazing. Well, you've inspired me.
You're very kind.
Thanks, Graham. That was just fantastic, and I'm really inspired to move on and really make this happen in the world. You know, I think more school children need to be opened up to this wonderful tradition we have in front of us, connecting with the land that we live on and live in. And I don't know how exactly this is going to go forward. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I just feel this is an idea whose time will come and is coming right now. And if anyone out there has any particular leads or suggestions for schools that we might work with, or anything they want to say in response to all that's been said in this podcast, would be great to hear from you. And you can get in touch with us via our website, britishpilgrimage.org, by emailing info@britishpilgrimage.org. Thank you so much, and do please subscribe to us on social media and sign up to our newsletter so we can keep you abreast of guided pilgrimage events that we're doing. Thank you very much, and until the next one. Bye.